So for those of you who may have a Renegade XXC or at some point upgraded to the Fox Podium RC2 1.5 shocks, you may be a little bit confused on what the adjustments do and how it affects the ATV overall. There's quite a few adjustments on these shocks, so I thought I would do a little video on explain it a little bit more, and I'll also leave a link in the description to the Fox website, which goes over all this information as well. Overall, on these shocks, there's a total of 4 adjustments that can be done, and I'm going to start from the very bottom adjustment. That would be this one way down here at the bottom of the shock. This is your rebound. This is what you want to adjust if you're going over bumps, like if you're kind of think of like moguls in skiing, where you're going over like a lot of bumps and the suspension is working really hard. What this adjustment will do, whether you make it stiffer or loosen it up a little bit, it will affect how quick the wheel comes back up to its normal position. So if you're going over a lot of bumps and the suspension is really working hard, you're going to want that wheel to either return back to its normal position faster or slower, depending on the type of terrain that you're in. And that's the adjustment there that you will do in order to change that setting. If you move up further, there's this collar right here that goes around the very top of the spring, and this is adjustable by turning it. And what it will do is it will increase or decrease the overall length of the spring, which will also increase or decrease the ride height. A lot of times when you hear people talk about preload or sag, this is the adjustment that they're talking about. You do want a certain amount of preload on these shocks, and it depends on mostly your rider, your weight as a rider. How much gear you have on will affect that, and other factors as well. If you have like a bunch of stuff on the rear rack, all that will add to the overall weight on the back, and you may want to adjust this depending on what your particular situation is. From what I've read and what I was told at the dealership when I bought this, these are set up pretty much for a rider at around 180 pounds, and that's basically what I am at. If I throw on my gear and everything else, I'm a little bit more than that, but not enough to really want to mess with this setting. I'm pretty much going to leave this just where it is. I'm more concerned with the other adjustments on the shock overall. The other setting that we have is called, let me find it real quick, is a dual speed compression. The reason why it's called dual speed compression is you have an adjustment up here for high speed and low speed compression, and they're both can be changed independently of each other. The first one is this blue nut on the outside. This is your high speed compression, and you'll take a 17 millimeter socket and you can adjust that, turn it left or right. If you want to make it stiffer, you turn it to the right. Same thing with the low speed compression. It's turn it right or turn it clockwise. This is what you want to do if you want to adjust how stiff or soft the suspension is when you're going over bumps at high speeds. It's how plush or how stiff you want the ride to be. This is the outer blue nut. I didn't even know that was an adjustment until I got looking at this further. And this adjustment right in the middle is a low speed compression, and you'll adjust that for lower speeds. Like if you go over a large bump and come down, like if you get some air and you come down, that setting is what you'll want to adjust for how soft or how stiff the suspension is going to be when you land. I haven't adjusted any of these settings yet. When I first got the machine, it was a little bit overwhelming as far as the settings go. The only shock adjustments I've done on anything was a Cobra Mustang that I drag raced. I would use the suspension on that for weight transfer. It was a pair of 10-way adjustable strain shocks. and that's a far removed from this type of setting as far as shocks and how they work. So I've done a little bit of reading, and it makes a lot more sense now that I've read up on it a little bit and watched a few videos. And even after I did that at first, it was still a little bit confusing, but it's not as bad now. I think I pretty much have a good grasp of it. So I think later on, when actually able to start riding this more, I'll start playing with some of those adjustments. And one thing that I did too, I don't know if you can really see it because it's really dark under here, but I marked a little black mark there and a black mark up here. That's the factory settings. So if I make an adjustment, I can always line those little dots back up to know where I started from. And what I write too in the description on the Fox site, these adjustments to the high and low speed compression, I believe it was the low speed compression has 24 clicks and the high speed has 22, and they're both set at 12, which is right in the middle. They kind of do this as a best of both worlds setting, and they leave it up to the rider to adjust from there depending on the type of terrain that you ride in. So I looking forward to playing around with this a little bit more. Basically, I'm going to leave it as it is for now. And one other thing about the preload setting here is that once this machine is broken in, these springs will settle a little bit. So if you do want to adjust the sag in this, wait until you have the machine broken and you have about 20 hours or 200 miles on it, and let these springs get settled in a little bit. But you can adjust the other ones at any point depending on the type of riding you're doing. And I mostly wanted to see what kind of riding I'm going to be in a lot of the time before I just started making adjustments on it without actually being on the machine and riding a lot. So once I get on it more and figure out pretty much the type of terrain I'll be in most of the time, I'll be in a lot better position to make a few adjustments on this and see how it goes from there. But sorry for no videos lately. Like I said, I can't go riding yet. The trails are actually closed, so it's one step closer to them being dried out and being open. And what I mean by them being closed is that the snowmobiles are not allowed on them anymore either, so now it's kind of like the limbo period. And once I do get this out on the trails a lot more, I'll have some videos on how to do the maintenance on it. Once it's broken in, I have the 100 miles or 20 hours on it. I don't know, maybe it's 200. Yeah, I think it's 200 miles on it, or 20 hours. I'll do a maintenance video on doing the differential fluid change, transmission fluid change, oil, and all that stuff. So keep in touch. Thanks for watching. I'll have more videos later on once the weather improves and the trails are open. Thanks. See ya.